originally about, the tennis court. And so that was originally proposed as a tennis court study. I asked for it to be expanded to a field study, and I'm grateful that town meeting voted on that and funded that. So we have paid for that. We taxpayers have paid for this study. And since then, I've worked with Michelle. Really, Michelle has done the work, to be frank, on gathering information about where the town has available land and potential places that we should look at for all the various needs that we have. We also met internally among different town employees, including those at the schools, facilities, recreation, to get their input as well as their data, in part so that way we could really sort of make sure we got the most out of Activitas with respect to doing the diligence on our side. And then we put the RFP out in, I think, the fall, Michelle, from what I recall. And so the RFP has been out, and Activitas will talk about what they're doing. But from where I think we are right now, we've sort of gathered the internal data that we can, but what we need really is help from the community, from you all, in terms of trying to get the information about more specific scheduling needs, as well as other inputs generally about recreation needs, in order to inform next steps, including how to use that precious limited land we have and what's the best use for that land, and then how we look at the land we do have right now and increase its use to be more efficient for the needs that we have. And so these are all issues that are on the table. And as we move towards the next town meeting, these are issues that we're trying to lock down and try to have some concrete proposals and decisions on, in part because to the extent we need to do some warrant articles or other work at town meeting, we're trying to stay on track for that. And so this forum marks an important point in starting to get that community input. Although to the extent that people are not here and want to provide feedback, they're always welcome to do so by contacting Michelle or I. And I would just urge people to please continue to participate in the process, particularly at town meeting or in the voting booth, to ensure that your input is heard and that proposals receive the funding they need to actually come to fruition, because that's a really critical piece of all of this at the end of the day as well. So thank you for coming, and I turn over to you, Michelle, at this point.
So thank you, Jean. So as far as tonight's forum, the way it is scheduled is we're going to let Activitas provide an overview of what they've studied thus far, what the needs are, and questions they may have for us. We've also created a few polls that will pop up periodically that we'd love for you to answer. If your friends and neighbors and other members of the community aren't available this evening, we will put these polls in a Survey Monkey and make sure it goes out to the broader community so everyone's voice is heard. And then the last 30 minutes of this forum is really for you to ask questions and provide some feedback. And this is for the community, so we want to hear all your questions and see how much we can address maybe this evening, or take them back and address you at a later date. So thank you for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Activitas.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll share our screen now. We got a little presentation. All right. Can you guys see that? Everything look good? Okay. So again, thank you very much. My name is Mark Novak. I'm the design principal with Activitas, and to my left is Olivia Messenger, our landscape designer, and our primary point person on this athletic and recreational fields assessment and master plan for the town of Cohasset. So tonight for us is really kind of a progress update to you all. We were officially retained by the town back in the fall. And since then, we've been performing our existing conditions review of a number of the assets within the community, the physical facilities, outdoor recreational facilities that you have in town. But secondly, and for us more importantly, it's an informational gathering session. So we kind of want to act like a sponge this evening to find out what the community really wants and what their desires and needs are from their existing recreational facility. So next slide. Brief agenda for tonight is we'll go over a brief introduction of who we are and what we do at Activitas. I think that's important for everyone to understand our background. So we'll give you a real quick overview of what we do. And then a little bit on the needs assessment and master plan, what we're really going to be delivering to the town as part of this project. From there, Olivia will explain what we've done to date in terms of the existing condition analysis. And then number 4 is kind of a high-level discussion about what we need from the community in terms of additional information. So we've been able to gather some data through Michelle, through the rec department, through the high school, but there's definitely some information and data gaps that we'd like to close up as part of our needs assessment. And then finally, we'll talk about next steps. After we get that data, what do we do with it? How do we, pop it into our formula to decide, what exactly would be or should be recommended for the town of Cohasset's recreational system. And then finally, we'll end with some discussion and some questions and hopefully answers. And we'll leave a good amount of time for that at the end. So first and foremost, here at Activitas, we're landscape designers and civil engineers. There's 9 professionals in our office, a combination of landscape architects and civil engineers. Patrick McGuire is our managing principal. Megan Bazinski is our principal civil engineer. And I am the design principal in the office. We work on everything from project initiation all the way through maintenance planning and life cycle planning to decommissioning and rebuilding projects from again. So anything that's athletic and recreational based in an outdoors environment, we do work on. So our firm has been around for a little over 10 years, but I've been doing this type of work for 25 plus years. So everything from master planning to regulatory permitting through construction documents and construction administration services. And that includes active and passive parks, athletic fields, bike trails, rail trails, playgrounds, courts, being tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts, and also running tracks, grandstand systems, stadiums, etc. Our primary client base is municipalities and colleges and universities and private schools, but we also do some professional work. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the New England Patriots and the New England Revolution. For the past 15 years, we've been their primary athletic consultant. We've done consulted on all of the field resurfacing inside of Gillette Stadium and also the 3 practice fields behind Gillette Stadium. We were also the lead landscape architect and civil engineer associated with the New England Revolution practice facility that was developed down below Gillette Stadium over the past few years. Next slide. In addition to that, before every home game at Gillette Stadium, we perform testing on the surface of the field as part of the NFL Players Association's testing protocol. So they have to test those fields to make sure that they're safe for NFL play. So we do that before every home game, and we also test their natural grass athletic fields anywhere between 3 to 4 times a year in accordance with the NFLPA's requirements. At the collegiate level locally, we've worked at a number of universities locally, but I think probably 2 of the biggest ones is Boston College, where we've been their principal landscape architect for probably close to 20 years, both here at Activitas and at our previous firms. Going back to the original slide, Patrick, Megan, and I although Activitas has only been around for 10 years, we've worked together for close to 20 years. So we've done work at BC, including the bubble in the stadium, their athletic field in Alumni Stadium, their field hockey field, their soccer field, and also their baseball and softball field. Over at Harvard University, very much the same. Almost every single athletic and recreational project on the campus of Harvard, we've had our hands in. And then finally, at the municipal level, some local municipalities that you may have visited, and some of the facilities that you've visited. The town of Dedham, where our office is located, we've done almost all of their facilities. These are just a few representative images of Gonzalez Field on the left, and then Trenton Road Playground on the right. And then down in the middle is a rail trail rendering that we have been working with the town on for the past several years. Secondly, the town of Scituate, right next door. Worked with the town of Scituate and Maura Glancy, the recreation director there, on the renovation of the athletic fields behind the high school and middle school. This was a project that was kind of a grassroots project, I'll say, that started with a master plan. And they had definitely had a lack of athletic and recreational facilities in town when compared to the demand with not only their student athletes, but the community as a whole. And it started with a needs assessment. Once that needs assessment was performed, it determined that they needed additional facilities, and they just didn't have the space in town or the desire to develop previously undeveloped land. So they decided to take the existing track and field, which was turf, renovate that, and then convert 2 of their existing natural grass fields into multi-purpose synthetic turf fields, where you get a much higher utility. We walked this through not only the schematic design level and early development stages, but through all levels of town government, all the way through town meeting, which we were fortunate enough to have passed, largely funded by CPC. At the time, it was the largest CPC project in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Excellent. And then finally, the town of Weymouth. We're on our 5th, I think, Olivia, project with the town of Weymouth now. We've been fortunate enough to have been working with them since probably around 2013. We've done Legion Field in the heart of town. We did Lovell Playground behind the Pingree School over in Jackson Square. We did Libby Field, which is the synthetic turf baseball field immediately across from Town Hall. And a couple of other projects. And now we're currently working on a more traditional park project right off of Route 3A, Beals Park, right before you hit the Fort River Bridge. Excellent. So needs assessment and master plan overview. The work we're performing is really trying to get to the crux of what the town of the town of Cohasset, that is, currently has for athletic and recreational facilities in their entire system, analyzing those to understand better how they're performing, the amount of maintenance that's being applied, or how those facilities are being served on an annual basis, the current condition of them, and then really the biggest element is how much are they being used, and how is that relating to the current condition of them, and can they withstand more use? Are they receiving too much use? Does the town actually need additional facilities to meet the current demand or level of service expectations in the town of Cohasset? So first and foremost, I want to explain a little bit about the difference between active and passive recreation. It's fairly straightforward. Active is anything that's really competitive and serves organized athletics and recreation. So soccer programs, softball programs, lacrosse programs, etc. Passive recreation is more exactly what I just said. It's passive. It's jogging. It's bird watching. It's frisbee. It's not as organized. The purpose of our charge on this project is to really look at the active side of the recreational facility in the town of Cohasset. So understanding what you currently have on the active side of your facilities, how they're being maintained, and what we can do to help improve the experiences at all your facilities and potential new facilities in the future. The level of service in Cohasset, the standard and the expectations that the town of Cohasset has for their recreational facility is really what we're trying to understand a little bit better tonight. So through the question and answer period at the end of this presentation, we're again trying to be a sponge to understand more about what your expectations are for the future of the recreational facility in Cohasset. And from there, the goal of this study is to develop a framework for the future potential developments, future renovations or improvements to existing facilities, or future improvements to the maintenance practices, the cultural maintenance practices that are currently employed on each of your facilities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Olivia, and she'll walk you through quickly what we've done for each of the sites we've been charged to look at.
Sure. So this process started out with a short list of locations of facilities that you have in town that we were given by the town. And what we did was a colleague and I, earlier in the fall, visited each of the sites, drove around, got out, walked around the sites, did a ground level walk, photography at each site. I also flew a drone over each site to get a little bit closer aerial imagery for each of your sites. And we're just kind of looking for what sort of facilities are there, what size fields are there, what if there are permanent striping, synthetic turf, whatever amenities support those fields, like seating, lighting, drinking fountains, scoreboards, anything like that. And so we're walking around the site, taking photos, noting the locations and the quantities and the conditions of those things, looking at the conditions of surfaces, your tracks, your turf, your grass fields, and noting things like slope, steep slopes, heavy vegetation, parking, circulation, all those things on the ground. We also performed a GIS analysis back in the office. And in that analysis, we're looking at things like topography, wetlands, conservation areas, what types of soils are on the site, any historic and natural preservation areas on or adjacent to each of your sites. And from there, we can get a sense of how these sites are performing, how these sites can perform differently, better, or expand that programming in the future. And so we looked at 3 school sites. The first was the middle high school, where there are 3 fields, one stadium field that's turf and 2 natural grass practice fields. We looked at the Deer Hill Elementary School, where you have a soft field with a flexible use outfield that at the time that we were visiting was striped for use by Cohasset High School hockey. And that's located on the same sort of complex of town-owned land with the Joseph Osgood School, the lower elementary school, which in itself is a playground. We looked at 3 dedicated athletic complexes in town. This is Beechwood Field, your largest dedicated baseball field. Freedom and Barnes Complex, which is Freedom, Chase, and Barnes Fields, which is softball fields, and 2 Little League fields. We looked at the Milliken Complex, which has a sort of large rectangle of flexible recreational athletic fields space. So that can be used, 2 rectangular fields or a rectangular field and a large baseball diamond can be played at once. It also has tennis on the left side of the screen. We also looked at 2 town parcels that are also used for various recreational uses. Here we have the complex on Sawyer Street, which is the grounds of the building that serves the town library and the Department of Recreation. We also looked at this parcel, which is connected to, I believe, the water department, which is a wetland known as Elm's Meadow, which has historically been used in the winter for skating. So that brings us to a total of 8 properties that we visited, that we cataloged, with the potential to expand to other sites as those arise in conversation with the town.
So the general purpose of that initial site assessment is, as Olivia mentioned, taking a look at those sites, all the opportunities and constraints within the site, with a mind for how we might be able to improve programming if those sites were to receive some kind of renovation or restructuring. I think in general, our overall opinion of the existing facilities within town are that they're in fair to good shape. I think just generally our perspective on the current situation in town is that there's just not enough. There's not enough facilities to support the current demand. The natural grass fields at the time of year, it might be a little jaded because we had a wonderful year last year in terms of rainfall and natural grass growth. Whereas years past, the use and demand on the natural grass fields, the look of the fields might have been quite a bit different in the fall than what we saw this year. But we'll continue to progress our analysis of the existing sites, but we'll also be taking what we hope to gather from you tonight and from additional meetings in the future, is really the use and participation rates that are currently being placed on your facilities. So the next slide that we're going to be looking at is an example of a needs assessment and master plan that we performed for another community here in the Commonwealth. This is for Sharon, Massachusetts, and they retained us to do a very similar study to take a look at all of their facilities and determine, which way they need to go if they need to either renovate some of their facilities, if they need to develop new facilities, but really they needed the data and the background to prove to their constituents that additional facilities were required in town. So in Sharon, we looked at it a couple of different ways, hoping to come to the same result. And in fact, we did. So we looked at it, one from a participation rate level, and then also from an hours of use perspective. We went out to all the athletic and recreational organizations in town, asked for their schedules, their permitting schedules, and also the number of participants in each of the organizations. And then we classified them into 5 general categories, 1 being baseball and cricket, 2 being Little League, 3 being softball, 4 being multi-purpose, which was really a big catch-all for soccer, football, lacrosse, and other rectangular field sports. And then finally, 5th was a miscellaneous space use of more of a passive recreation element that as the study progressed, that kind of got pushed to the side. That wasn't as big of a concern for the town. And what both, if we can flip to the next slide, what both elements basically showed us, if we looked at the average or balanced average hours and average participation for each of their facilities, their there was an excess of softball fields, and there was a significant need for more multi-purpose rectangular fields in town, and also a small need for Little League. Baseball was pretty much on point with their needs. Next slide. So we also took all the data that we received from the youth organizations and comparing participation hours, but we also looked at it from their level of service and maintenance perspective to find out whether or not they were doing enough to maintain their current facilities, and if they had the ability to properly maintain a new facility if it was developed. So that column in the middle where it says activity multipliers, if you go down that column, you'll see different activities like field hockey, football, lacrosse, and they all have a different number associated with it. So let's say football is on a field for 2 hours a night, 5 days a week. So that's 10 hours a week. We would apply a multiplier to that of 2.75, just because how disruptive a football organization can be to a natural grass playing surface, considering the time of year, considering the activity, considering the cleats that they wear. It's very aggressive, especially in between the hash marks of the football field. Same thing goes for soccer, with or without cleats. It has a little bit smaller of a multiplier, but that really starts to get piled into our formula for what is the right amount of hours of use for various programs and organizations over the course of the year. And then on the left, we have our activity rating. And this is all part of the National Park and Recreation Association's guidelines, and also STMA's, Sports Turf Managers Association. So typically, a municipality is in the medium range for maintenance. Medium to heavy is what Sharon classified as. So they were doing more than just mowing and watering their athletic fields. They were performing some aeration programs, they were top dressing, and they were overseeding on an annual basis. So we'll take a look at that as well as we perform our full assessment of all your facilities. So really, kind of to circle back on the hours and participation, that's what we're looking to gain from the community and from the people interested in improving the recreational facilities or continuing to develop the recreational facilities in town. We need information from your youth group organizers, but not just youth group organizers. If there's adult softball, if there's pickleball organizations, it's a multi-generational need in town. It's something that we need to pull and gather information from basically every age group. I think I was looking at the open space study that was performed in 2009, and it said largely that the community, a very high percentage of the community in the survey that was performed back then was very happy with the recreational assets in town. It was just there wasn't enough information on what was available. That was 13 years ago, and things have changed a lot then, including the demographics of the town. So the level of service standard changes with time, and we need to get information from all of your organizations. As much as information as you can provide to us, it will only make the needs assessment stronger. So finally, we took a look at a couple of potential renovation and or development projects in town. These are non-specific sites. I don't want anyone to think that these are things that are definitely going to happen. But this is something that may come out of our study. This is just an idea of what could happen in terms of what we'll be looking at the end in terms of recommendations. So here's a site where, we're looking at 5 tennis courts and expanding some athletic fields to include some additional athletic and recreational fields, including a new baseball field and a new overlying multi-purpose natural grass athletic field. Or it could potentially be next. The development of a previously non-developed site, or it's a developed site, but it's not developed for recreational use. So what would it mean for the town to retain or purchase a property and develop it for recreational use? Here we're looking at potentially a couple of multi-purpose, either synthetic turf or natural grass athletic fields, slightly on the smaller side, running in the east to west direction, but then having a full-size multi-purpose athletic field running perpendicular to that in the north-south direction. And then a complete tennis and pickleball and basketball court complex down in the lower hand. Pickleball is an emerging trend all across America. We're seeing it. I did the work in Situate, but I'm also a resident in Situate, and I'm very aware of the demand on the tennis courts that are striped for pickleball in town. And we're seeing it from all of our municipal clients. Anytime we put in a tennis court, they're asking us to have it striped for pickleball as well, just because of the high demand. So what does it mean to have a tennis and pickleball court complex? This is another site that Michelle and Jean pointed out that we may want to take a look at. Should the data and should the comments from the community come back to say this is a need, this is a desire. And with that, Michelle, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. That presentation was wonderful. I'd like to start some of the polling questions to hear from the attendees. We also have a question from one of the attendees, and I'd like to ask that. So, are the rectangular fields regulation size for high school games, soccer, lacrosse, etc.? The proposed.
Oh, in that proposed image?
Yes.
So the one running north to south would be, actually, they would probably both be, the two running east-west are slightly undersized for high school. I believe they would be more of a 9v9 youth soccer type layout. Potentially could be sized field hockey. We'd have to take a closer look at that. If we were getting into lacrosse and soccer at the high school level, most definitely the field overlapping and running north-south could be used for any rectangular field sport, probably including rugby if you wanted to, which is the largest rectangular field sport there is. And then it really comes down to discussions over what type of field surfacing that is and how much use do you want to place on it. Currently, I believe the only synthetic turf field in town is the one at the high school, at least town owned, right? There is a classic sport complex that has a pitch with turf on it as well. But, in our experience and opinion, if a synthetic field is installed, you basically get the utility of 3 natural grass fields out of 1 synthetic turf field. So that's something that, once we get all the data in and determine where the needs and desires really are pointing to, we can have a larger discussion about field surfaces as well. I hope I answered that question.
Excellent. So I'm going to launch a poll to see how the attendees are feeling. Hoping everyone can see the poll.
I can see it.
Okay, great. So it'd be great if everyone could participate in this poll. And like I said, for your neighbors and other community members that aren't on this forum, we will throw this in a Survey Monkey, make sure we put it on our website and get it out to everybody else. Okay, and while people are filling out the poll, I think the next step, Mark, may be to have some hands raised from the attendees, giving us some additional feedback about their usage. I do see a lot of names here who are active in many of the youth organizations that have high usage for these fields, and I think that they'd be able to answer many of the questions, probably real time for us now.
That would be great. It's pretty telling.
Yeah.
Some of these. Back to number 3, Michelle, just looking at that, anyone in your household has a disability. We've also taken a brief overview of each site in terms of access requirements. So any facility where we propose renovations and or potential new developments, equal access is always one of our primary concerns in the development of it or renovation of a facility. Oh, that's great.
This is great. So this is some real-time information that we're getting. It's nice to capture this so we can discuss it tonight if people so choose. I think we want to see if we can eliminate those pores as much as we can. Okay, so it looks like we have 19 of the 24 attendees that have completed the poll. I'm going to close the poll.
Can you do a screen capture of Darren's comment there?
Gotcha.
Thank you. Thanks, Darren, for that information. That's fantastic. And we've currently received information from Cohasset High School athletics. We've received some information from recreation in terms of permitted hours for the spring of last year, I believe it was, Michelle.
Yes.
We have not received anything from, well, other than Darren just updating us now on Cohasset Youth Baseball and Softball. So that's fantastic. I would like to get some more information on tennis use. And then the rectangular field use, if we could get some information from Youth Lacrosse, if there's any other organizations that are using those fields, that would be great as well. Situate Cohasset football is most of that practice and played in Situate, or are some of the facilities in Cohasset used as well? Do we know that?
I'm under the impression that they practice in Cohasset on occasion, but it's mostly played in Situate, is what I was told. Something else I can add to the conversation is I spoke to Ted Carroll, our recreation director, and he indicated that all permits for field use will be in February 1st. So at that point, we'll be able to share some more scheduling with you.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so we have some comments here in the chat that I'd like to read, and it's things that we can talk through we have a comment that tennis courts are sorely needed in the community. So I know that's something we had talked about previously, and anytime we cite new locations, we're mindful of that, and we try our best to put tennis or pickleball where we can. We have an issue with soccer practice during the week, as they can't get on the field until 6 because of high school use.
And that's town travel or just town, or maybe both?
Travel.
Okay.
We have two hands raised, and I'd love to let them talk, so we can hear their feedback. So we have Darren Souza for one. So hi, Darren.
Hey, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for the work you put into this study so far. I'm past president of CYBSA. I'm still on the board as an emeritus guy doing special projects. We just furnished you some registration data that y'all just saw. A question and then maybe some input. Is it your initial findings that you said softball has more than enough fields, and baseball is, did you say on point? Is that kind of how, is that what you heard? Is that what you said?
No, yeah, that was for another community. That was just an example I was showing based on the data that we received from the other community. I don't think we're at the point, Darren, where we've received enough data to really understand the true needs.
You were still talking about Sharon then, or right at that point. Okay, forgive me. So just some input collectively from CYBSA, is the baseball, softball youth organization. You're familiar now with the lay of the land and the complex. We serve from age 4 years old, from very instructional ball, all the way up through high school age, using the Barnes complex and the Beechwood field, and sometimes the Deer Hill softball field. Yeah, I would just say that I'll go right to kind of pain points. We have really good growth at the younger levels, and softball is growing too. I think in the past, baseball had the benefit of being the uptake for some excess capacity on the softball side, but now that softball is thriving, softball is also pressed. We have to house the varsity high school team that we combine with Hall. That's probably going to be a Cohasset only high school team soon, and also a JV team is likely to follow quickly. So we have growth on the softball side, which is pinching softball in baseball. We barely get, with good weather, we do get most of our games in. Sometimes we have to go to other towns and borrow their fields. Where we're really struggling is the ability to implement practice and training programming, just so practice and skills. It just gets to the point, as you know, you're in the business, that skills, practice lead to confidence, lead to fun, lead to a safer playing environment. So we've undertaken an initiative to hopefully light the fields to extend the use of the existing facility. But we're flat out hurting to get our programming in, and where it really suffers is on the skills and the practice side, whether it's teams or clinics or stations and things like that. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does, very much so. Thank you. Do you see, Darren, an equity issue in terms of baseball to softball in town, or is it just that you're starting to see some more growth in softball?
Yeah, we're thrilled to see the growth in softball. I think we do a good job of championing both programs equitably. Baseball has larger numbers. Softball across the board has more growth, and there's a lot of momentum there. I'm one member of the board. It's definitely always at the fore as a priority to foster the growth of softball. So I'd like to think that there's equity there, but you know, it's always tough when one program is kind of newer in age.
Yeah.
Baseball
Yeah.
has been more established, so we do everything we can for sure, but you know, there's always more that we can do.
Understood.
And I know there's a lot of other CYBSA and families from both sides here, so I'm sure that they may be inclined to comment. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Karen. So we have another attendee who'd like to speak, David McDonough. And then we have some questions in the chat that I'd like to read after before we get to more members of the audience here.
Hi, this is Dave. Can you hear me?
We can.
Fantastic. So, hi, I'm Dave McDonough. I'm currently serving as president of the board of Cohasset Youth Lacrosse. Just a bit of perspective, then a couple of questions. So we, similar to baseball, I think we've seen growth within our program, and that's particularly evident at our younger levels. Our program runs from 1st grade through 8th grade. In the earlier years, we really see lacrosse as a sport that a lot of kids try out for the first time and experiment with it and see if it's something that they want to stick with. And then once we really get past probably the 3rd or 4th grade level, we have a solid group of kids that stay on. So our numbers are always bigger at the more junior levels. Right now, our registration is currently open. We have over 300 kids in town registered for our spring program. And our registration is still open for about another week. Our program does not have dedicated space for lacrosse. We primarily use the school fields as opposed to the town fields. So our girls program really utilizes the Deer Hill complex, whereas our boys program uses Alumni Field. And that's for games and practices. We try to schedule around it at the various fields as well. That's one of the complexities for us is trying to, given that we use the high school space, we have to schedule around the high school teams, and we need to also schedule around soccer, who runs a spring program as well. I'd say the other thing, just you talked about grass surfaces and artificial surfaces. Our season runs really in April, May, and then into probably the 3rd week of June. We always try to kick off in April, but given that the weather's pretty wet at that time of year, a lot of the fields in town don't have the best drainage, and we often are informed by the town or the schools that we cannot use the fields at times just because they're wet. I can say Milliken Field and the front field at Cohasset High School are the primary locations where we experience that. So I'd be really interested in hearing more about artificial turf solutions that we could use when, after a rainstorm or even during a rainstorm, or when the field is wet. So I just wanted to ask 2 questions, but one, just a point that you made on Scituate Cohasset football. They do use Scituate facilities exclusively.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the 2 questions I had, one was we had received a survey through the rec department several months ago from Activitas and filled that out. Had you received the results of that? And if not, did you need any specific input from our program?
So I think, Mark, what they're referring to is Ted Carroll, the recreation director, formulated a Google survey. David, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were many members of the community youth organizations that filled that out. And there's some substantial data in there. If you don't have it, we can certainly share it.
Yeah, we have not received that yet.
Okay. We will get that to you for sure.
Okay. Thanks. And the second question I had, you'd indicated that at the beginning of your presentation that the conclusion was that we do not have enough field space in town. I was wondering if you've measured that deficiency. Like, are we close to being?
I haven't reached that. We haven't reached that conclusion yet, David. I think that was just the general sense
Got
that we were getting from what we're hearing and what we're seeing. And you know, the whole point of gaining or gathering your current participation rates for each of the organizations and better understanding the struggles you're having with scheduling, figuring out, you know, how much time each program is using various fields and what level of maintenance is going into those fields, all gets pumped into the formula to determine whether or not there is a shortage. But as I stated before, it seems like all arrows are pointing towards, yes, there is a shortage. You know, once we run everything through the needs assessment formula, it will tell us how large of a shortage, or if there's a shortage, one, and two, how large that shortage is, if there is one.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. So if you need any information from our program, I actually have from the email that was sent earlier this year, I have Olivia's contact information. I can reach out with my contact info and we can provide
Awesome, thank you very much.
specific information you need.
That's great.
Okay. So we do have someone in the chat that just asks, is there consideration to multi-use fields for lacrosse and soccer, etc., and the trends nationally? Also, given the weather here in Cohasset, is there a thought about extending the practice seasons with additional turf fields?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially here in New England, you know, in communities that are relatively land-strapped, conversion of one or potentially more natural grass fields to synthetic turf really helps in terms of meeting their programmatic needs, one, and two, it also helps to take the demand off of other natural grass fields. So Situate, for example, you know, where they had a shortage, they were able to address some of that shortage. And then actually, the facility behind the high school doesn't address their entire athletic field needs. I think when their needs assessment was performed, they had a shortage of somewhere in the 19 to 22 fields based on participation rates. And it was at a point where all of their natural grass fields were being reduced to dust on an annual basis. One, because of the amount of use being placed on them. Two, because Situate's annually in an irrigation ban and they can't properly maintain them. So lacrosse and soccer being on the same multi-purpose field, we see a lot of that. A lot of our municipal clients for the past, I would say, decade, have been trying to expand and improve their recreational facility by adding at least one and sometimes more synthetic turf facilities.
And Mark, just to follow up on that question, someone else asks, are you including the spike of activity in certain sports due to COVID, and is it sustainable?
You know, no. I think that's the short answer to that one. You know, we haven't really considered COVID because COVID's a constantly evolving thing right now. You know, the spike in certain sports, I would assume, would be more, at least from a recreational standpoint, the spike from COVID is more of a passive, in our experience, demand. You know, it's more jogging trails, it's more nature trails, it's not so much the more active recreational athletics, especially not contact sports like soccer, lacrosse, even field hockey, football. You know, maybe a little bit on the tennis and pickleball side, because social distancing is, you know, kind of works with those sports a little bit more. but that's not something that we've heavily weighed. God, I hope it's, going to be a thing in the past and the relative near future. Obviously it's going to be a new normal, even though I hate that term. But that in our
is the
assessment.
representative from soccer, so I'd like to allow him.
This is great.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
How's it going? Do you guys hear me?
we can.
Hear you great, Jeremy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for taking the time here. Just to reiterate what baseball and lacrosse said, our sport has been growing too. I mean, our numbers are up for in-town by 100 kids this year in the past. We started 4 years old, and we go all the way. We do have a high school program for the spring season as well. And like
Okay.
Lacrosse said, during the week, for the travel teams, we can, we can't get on Milliken Field to do practices almost till May because we have to stay off the fields because of the weather and things like that. So we're at a disadvantage of the towns where we can't even get practices in during the week to start our spring season. So it's very tough for our coaches to do anything. And then once we do get on, like I said, we can't get on until after the high school programs are done with the field, and they're getting out later in school at times now. So it pushes us back. And then obviously in the fall, it's even worse because the light goes away. In the spring, it's not as bad because it stays lighter during the end of the day.
Yeah.
So we are having issues at that spot. And on top of it, we're trying to cram all our travel soccer all up at alumni. Now we're trying to move that off Milliken Field as much as we can because we have so many people. Parking's an issue up there because one time we could have up to 200 people at that field at one time on a Saturday for an hour, within an hour, with skills going on plus games going on. We're trying to utilize as much space as possible. And then sometimes we throw a travel game in there on top of it, just because we don't have access to alumni, because the high school they might have a varsity game or JV game that has to be played at alumni. So we get kicked off alumni field. So yeah, we are hurting for space. And then again, during the week, during the spring, when lacrosse starts, we're sharing the fields too for the practices. So it gets tricky too. How many teams were allowed up there? I mean, right now, I believe we have 11 travel teams, and we might only allowed to have 2 up there at that time because of field space. And plus, we can't get on there until if there's a baseball game going on during the spring. We have to wait till the baseball game or be pushed all the way towards the tennis courts. And then those games can run late too. So it's very difficult for that. And on top of it, Milliken too is the field maintenance is not the greatest there. I mean, we fill in a lot of potholes. There's a lot of sinkholes up in the field that I buy a lot of potting soil so kids won't break their ankles. So we're always, trying to maintain that as much as we can. We call the rec department, but nothing ever gets done. So we fill it in ourselves. So I know there's been issues with some sinkholes up there. So, with those fields. So like I said, on top of it, yeah.
I'm just wondering, in your personal experience, Jeremy, with other fields in town, is planarity and the consistency of the surface also an issue? Not just that.
Yes, I mean, well, we really only get to play on Milliken, and we do alumni. Once in a while, we used to practice on the front field at the high school, and that was just skills practices for some teams. But I've been up in Milliken for a lot of years up there.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Milliken, is on top of it. It's sloped. So even when the high school plays up there, the ball runs down one way. And if it rains, certain areas get bigger puddles than others. So we're very cautious, for our Saturday program. If it's raining, we cancel, not cancel? And and we hate to have the kids not play, but because of big puddles, or we don't want to tear up the turf, we will cancel more often than not to be on the safe side. So,
Understood.
so we do need field expansion. Like I noticed the picture you sent. That that would be great if they're able to do that. Have the additional baseball field with the bigger soccer fields on there or lacrosse fields on top of it. So, and like I said, the biggest issue too is parking.
Right.
So, and again, alumni field's not the greatest too. I mean, obviously the turf's going to be replaced this summer, and that even has puddles and the lines are not the greatest and all that stuff up there, and it's very dangerous towards the edges where the kids run out, because it goes to the grates and all that stuff. So it's not wide enough, put it that way, where all of a sudden the grates go right to the track system. I've been to other fields where they give you more leeway, for the kids to run. The sidelines are very narrow up there.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, Jeremy. Those are great.
Thank you.
Great. Does anyone have any other comments or anything any comments, any questions, anything you'd like to share? Anything that we haven't addressed in the presentation that you'd like to see? And we do have someone raising their hand. So we have Roger. So we have two more questions. Roger Crafts. Roger?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
We can.
I just wanted to make one comment that the Little League has proposed lights on the Barnes complex, and the neighborhood is almost universally opposed to that. And the reason is primarily for practice sessions. And my contention is that there are areas, whether it's in a lawn or where skills can be taught. And I think this would be extremely disruptive to a neighborhood. And so I just wanted to put that forth to really in top consideration, because I think Cohasset has been historically inadequate in providing adequate field practice areas. Our kids, 40 years ago, were going through the same things that we're going through right now. And I think we really have to take a good look at what we're proposing before we propose lights on a complex in a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, Roger. And Vince Thornton would like to speak as well.
Hear me?
We can hear you
We
now.
can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. You mentioned field maintenance. Is that, I don't believe that was part of Ted Carroll's survey. Will there be a format that we can discuss field maintenance on who handles that, whether it's the town and what the town does and what the particular organizations talk about? Jeremy talked about, walking around with potting soil, filling in holes. There's a lot of maintenance that's done at Beechwood and the Barnes complex by the CYBSA organization that oversees that. When is that discussion or information be passed along to you?
Well, I think one of the things that Michelle was planning on doing, the field study pool that we've activated as part of this presentation, I believe had a question on maintenance. But I think the goal was also to take this and turn it into a Google Monkey survey.
Survey Monkey?
Survey Monkey, sorry. It's been a long day. A Survey Monkey, and send that out to the larger community. And perhaps we can expand on some of those maintenance questions as part of that.
Yes, and Vince, if there's anything you want to address, can always send me an email on maintenance that you're taking care of that you believe is the town's responsibility, because I think that's part of this whole discussion.
Sure.
So I'm happy to take the email and field some questions if anyone would like to send them to me privately.
Yeah, and Michelle, I'm sure you have a lot of that information or you'll be getting that in our RFP response for the lease. So we can always clarify that if there are any questions.
All right.
Yeah, and I mean that's not and a project like this, that's not an uncommon topic of discussion. I don't mean to keep referring back to Situate, but their athletic fields there are maintained. Their natural grass athletic fields are maintained by the DPW, and if they get mowed on a weekly basis, DPW thinks they're doing great. And that's all that really happens on the natural grass fields in town. And if an organization or a municipality thinks they're going to maintain premium or even quality natural grass athletic fields by just mowing them, then they're very, very wrong.
I completely understand that fact. Yeah.
And Michelle and I have had some conversations about the level of maintenance that's currently being performed on all of these facilities, and not just athletic fields, but also courts, and what some of the deferred maintenance schedules are for those. But any additional information that can be supplied to include in our research will help. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we have one last question, again from David McDonough. So David, if you want to unmute.
Hi, thanks. So sorry, not a question, but just another point that I wanted to raise with respect to maintenance. So when our kids play on the natural grass surfaces, the town, we pay the town for usage of the field, but also for them to line the fields for us. And I just want to amplify that point because although we use the same locations, that's why our girls really focus on using on Deer Hill. The boys and girls lacrosse fields are actually different fields, lined differently. On alumni's turf, they're lined in different colors. But when we're playing on the natural grass surfaces, we actually have to use certain locations for girls and certain for boys. So we have the fields lined for that. So I just wanted to add that point, given that there was discussion on maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. I believe we've answered all the questions that have been posed. Oh, go ahead, Jean.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, Michelle.
No, not at all.
So, Mark, I know that you alluded to in the beginning the changing demographics of Cohasset, and I'm sure that you have these numbers, but we just had the census data come out.
Oh, great.
Everyone did in the nation, and it's interesting to compare the census data against the last census data, which was when that last open space and rec study was. And just for your awareness, the Cohasset's population has increased by 10%.
Wow.
In addition, and that's a greater exponential increase than the population growth generally. Moreover, it's not like we're necessarily just having larger families. This is also an increase in the amount of families because our housing units in Cohasset have increased by 12% from 2009 to 2020. And so we are looking at some substantial growth in new and different ways that's coming into Cohasset. And we've discussed this, a part of the housing unit growth isn't all necessarily new homes. Also, it's people who used to use Cohasset as, let's say, summer residents are now doing it as a permanent residence and they're living here. So, there's various factors that are coming into consideration. So I just wanted to give you some of those numbers because I do think they help inform why we're
They absolutely do. Yeah.
this ongoing consistent demand that I think is going to frankly continue into the future.
And what are you seeing in terms of the breakdown in terms of percentages of the population and age? So I think when I looked at the Census Bureau data, I think it was was a little dated. I think it was from 2019, but almost 30% of classes population was under the age of 18. Is that holding steady or is that increasing?
No, I believe that's holding steady.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jean.
Okay, any other questions, comments, feedback? Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody who attended this forum. I think it was wonderful to hear everyone's perspective, point of view, and questions answered and asked and answered. I think this was a great next step in our process. I anticipate that we'll work with Activitas to pull together all the information that's coming in the next few days. And maybe within the next month or so, you may see another public forum to wrap this all up, so you can see where the town's heading with this master plan. So thank you. If anyone else has any closing comments, please take the opportunity. Okay. It looks like everyone is dropping off at this point. So thank you for attending. And we will follow up. Everything will be posted on the town web portal. So any presentation you saw tonight or any information you're looking for, please refer to the town web portal or email me directly and I'll be happy to share. So have a good night, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.